how would the audit be if it emerged today, given the new technology that we have? It would be totally different, right? It would be more efficient. It would complement the technologies that we have right now. But instead, it has legacy. Right now, we have the legacy. They call it the legacy processes, which is like basically passed down from generation to generation, in which it is computerized. It's improved efficiently through different processes, but it acts as quantum leap, they call it. So think of it like a car, where your grandfather's car, and he passes it down to your dad, and your dad passes it down to you. And to make it work or make it run better, you just change some parts of the car. But deep inside, you know that you just need a new car, right? So that's how it works today. And I guess the quantum leap quantifies us buying a new car, right? So how do you get to the quantum leap? And it's enumerated in several ways. First is to deconstruct and re-engineer the processes. So the whole audit process has to be re-engineered or transformed to reach the quantum leap. Next, you have to tailor the data science and technologies for auditors. So there's a lot of technologies out there that can be used to the advantage by the auditors. Extending audit theory to encompass new theory approaches to modify those audit standards and to provide new guidance. And this one is quite important. It's more relevant to the essay. It says to use today's ubiquitous computing and connectivity to transform where and how work gets done. So ubiquitous, meaning, I looked this up, it means computing is everywhere and connectivity is everywhere. Meaning you can get things done at home. You don't have to be at the work site or the site of the client itself to get work done. It is important because a lot of companies or firms now use third-party providers like to help with the more mundane tasks. Right? I know like Deloitte India who prepares work papers, who populates them, and it helps us out here in America. Right? And lastly, there's to enable continuous auditing. So all of these is how you achieve the quantum leap, or in other words, to transform the audit process. And in this essay, they mention a blue sky scenario, which describes what future reporting auditing systems might resemble in the future, and how technology can be used to transform auditing. So in the intro, they try to describe this by making up a story about this girl named Sally, who was an external audit partner for ML Enterprises, which is a construction company. So, like I said, it's a made-up story. So it's in the future, obviously, and they use this system called ART, which is Automated Audit Reporting and Tracking System, which is basically a system that monitors continuously transactions, controls, and account balances 24/7. So it's a continuous audit, basically. Right? And what's important here is that it has the ability to self-learn as well. So having self-learning, it can better understand the business itself, as well as detecting certain patterns or anomalies that the audit team like Sally and the others might not catch. No, that's good. So if there's fraud, the system could catch it. It could see those patterns. So there's one incident that is worth noting where Sally noticed in the ART dashboard because it was described in the story that there are several lights that signal the audit team for certain
Pop-up ads. Yeah, I mean, I want you to start dancing.
So, like I was saying, there's an incident where Sal was alarmed by several lights, like a red light, yellow light, and a green light. And I'm assuming that the red light means it's more serious. So there's this incident where the Hong Kong Treasury Operations Group signal a controls parameter that signals Sally with a red light. in which case she was able to respond quickly by sending email to the audit partners in Hong Kong. So that in itself means that having this continuous audit or this continuing auditing system leaves you with a more timely reaction to the events that actually happened then and there, right? And another is that in this story, the continuously audited financial statements were posted every day in the MLE website, along with ART producing statistical charts, reports, and graphs, which Sally studies along with the financial statements, and she gives the go-ahead to have it posted on the website, along with her opinion. And in the story, she would give an qualified opinion always, since MLE has a good track record and does not violate, since they're stakeholder-centric, meaning they're very transparent in their operations. I mean, just to go along with the ART means that they're willing to show their information to all relevant parties. So there's another incident where MLE and Future Financial, which is a bank, I believe, and MLE was seeking a line of credit from them. And one of the things that Future Financial wanted was to have access to information of MLE. And Sally was in attendance, and she mentioned that it wouldn't be a problem since ART gives access to stakeholders anyway on a continuous basis. So she thought that it wouldn't be that hard to allow Future Financial to have access as well. So like I said, they're stakeholder-centric, so stakeholders have access to their information or just observe anyway, not to like really change anything. So she thought that let's give this crediting company access. So that's a great thing that the system has, which is to have that feature. And lastly, ART also would change the staffing model, since in the story mentioned that her team was full of experts in their own field. Since they're dealing with a very sophisticated system, for example, one of them was a statistics PhD graduate, so someone to interpret all the information. There's an IT specialist who actually helps work the system, and a construction industry specialist, so who knows how the construction industry actually works. So it says that there isn't really room for traditionally educated accounting graduates. So in this case, if this actually were to be implemented, we have to go further above what we were actually taught. I think we actually learned here in school. We're actually preparing for this type of event, right? Just to fast forward, this isn't the end of the chapter, but what happened in the end was that Sally retired, and she was happy that ART evolved into something else, which is called the Eco-ART, in which case the ART makes it possible to have audit systems and corporate or industry systems coexist. And regulations are also continuously updated, just kind of like Brett that represent on that. Spoiler alert. And lastly, and there's the evergreen opinion that happened after she retired. So that happened, so there's a continuous opinion being put out, as well as timely reactions to events, the evergreen opinion. And she said that the consistent leveraging of advanced technology and processes was the key to reaching that point in the audits. Right. Okay, moving on to the next part. It's a long story.
That would be a good time to do it.
Okay, next part is using technology to transform auditing. So what auditors don't really realize is the ability for information technology to transform the audit itself. Like I said earlier, it's only used now to just make it more efficient, right? So there's this thing called technology enablers, which is described in this chapter as the potential for improving audits. So thankfully to internet and advances in core technologies, we are globally connected in a world of ubiquitous computing. Like I said, ubiquitous meaning it's everywhere. Communications devices that provide a platform for transformational applications. So mobile devices make it possible for all these to happen. So we all have laptops, cell phones. Doesn't matter where you are. There's no such thing as sick days anymore. Like, especially if it's busy season in your audit firm. You call in sick, but when you're at home, you still have to work anyway, right? And what makes this possible is cloud computing. Some firms have their own systems where you all connect through the cloud, and you can, I guess, complement it with Skype, where you just talk to each other and use the clouding system to work on the work papers, for example, right? So, so like I said, how it used to be done before is on site. We don't have to do that. Okay. And so that's it. Yes.
I will talk more about the audit data analytics. Actually, we all know we have learned some audit analytics from the past and using the auditing tools such as the R and IDEA. And the audit data analytics talks about how to planning and performing the audit to help improve the audit efficiency and effectiveness. We know that audit data analysis could analyze the patterns and identify the anomalies and actual useful information by using the analysis, modeling, and virtualization, which includes analytic procedures and traditional file interrogation, which is not limited to this. Also, they mentioned that the audit data analytic have two modes of analysis, which are exemplary ADA and conformative ADA. Exemplary ADA, which is useful in auditing or planning, which could help to understand entity and the environment, and identify and assess the risk of material misstatement. Also, have to design further audit procedures. The conformatory ADA could help auditor with substantive or controls assurance about whether management's assertion are material correct. This is one of the technology to help to do the audit analytics. So with the technology, we can help auditors have have a high-level assurance to the companies. And so the article mentions that by using the technology, the auditors can achieve same level of assurance at low cost or more efficiency at the same cost. That's why, so the article mainly, overall view is about the technologies which have the provide more assurance, such as we can use technology to do the sampling. Traditionally, auditor will do the sampling and the regression analysis to make sure the high level of assurance. But the audit and technology could help maybe do the 100% of tests for the whole population, which are provide more assurance.
So currently the reasonable assurance reasonable assurance is 95% confidence level. And with the technology that we have today, we should really be able to do more. Like Beth said, we can provide higher level audits, like provide the same level at lower cost, or like maybe pay a little more to get higher quality audit and have it be more effective. But so right now, auditing favors cost efficiency over effectiveness, and basically we have the technology to provide better audits, but we just don't want to use it. So now imagine that we're in the medical field, and a better technology comes along, but and the doctor actually will use this technology, but in the audit profession, it doesn't really carry over. The auditors don't really they don't, yeah, so, I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, the auditors, it doesn't really apply to audit well. And this needs to change. To iterate what the text says, auditors need to make use of better technology options and provide the best economically viable audit. As Lawrence mentioned earlier, the audit profession needs a quantum leap makeover, and that will completely transform traditional audit to keep up with the demands of the way business is being done today. And because of how ubiquitous big data is, and we see it everywhere, like in marketing, it tracks what customers are buying, and it can figure out what they like and how it sports. It evaluates teams, players. In political campaigning, it studies voter demographics, and even SEC uses big data. So why can't auditors also incorporate this as well? In terms of incorporating big data into auditing, we need to first mine the large, voluminous set of transactional data through this process that collects the data called datafication. And once the data is structured and stored in the database, we can create criteria to detect fraud, kind of like what we saw in Watson Analytics. And in this case, like Jeff said earlier, we get to audit 100% of the data instead of just one full sample. So because this data allows us to look at a whole larger data set, it can also afford to make some error. Like for example, if you're an auditor and you are looking at a sample size of 30 and you come across two problems, you already failed the 95% confidence level requirements. So now you have to stress about trying to pick these two errors so that you can fulfill that requirement. But if you are looking at like a larger data set at like 100,000 maybe, and you have 5,000 problems, you're still in the 95% confidence level, but not saying it's a good thing, but at least it just shows that you can afford to have some errors. And in this case, it's on a scale like that, it's not significant. Another thing big data does is it identifies and makes use of correlation. The text provides an example of Canadian researchers. They're able to do their own data mining. They use big data to detect infections in these premature babies before things start to show. And for auditors, we don't, and they use this the doctors use this to study the functional causes, but for us auditors, we don't really care for the cause behind fraud. We are more concerned about when and how likely fraud happens. So we also have the ability to make continuous auditing and continuous assurance happen. Okay, so all right, but it's not really real time, but it's pretty close. And so like the way we can do this is we can access and monitor the automated internal control system periodically, and like in the ERP system, it already does the automating. It already updates the general ledger accounts when a transaction occurs. So all we gotta do is we just need to audit the system, make sure everything is going well and right, and then we can see the financial information and provide it to the stakeholders online. And interactive data reporting standards like XBRL also makes it easier and more appealing for the stakeholders. Well, we know that cost and labor are the two most biggest deterrents of reporting entities wanting to provide audited financial statements more than once a year. It's really not that expensive or laborious, and it provides a better quality client service. And we pretty much know that internal auditors this appeals to internal auditors because, but since we're seeing all this success from it, external auditors should also use it. And if continuous reporting is successful, the stakeholders will most likely want their information to have no informational risk, and that's how we can bring continuous audit, continuous assurance to the picture, and it becomes a necessary thing for us. And continuous monitoring and continuous audit is not just beneficial for stakeholders, it's also beneficial for external auditors too. For one, it can alert auditors of problems earlier on in the audit, so the auditors can respond and adapt plans for the remainder of the audit. They don't have to scramble at the end. They don't have to ask for an extension of the deadline or something like that. And two, it also spreads out the workload throughout the year, so the auditor doesn't have to look at a year's worth of data all at once. And while this does benefit all the auditors, it does benefit a large portion of us. I know some auditors have to be on site, but others can just do self-computing, perform audits. Another way to provide better quality audits, is to provide more effective fraud detecting. And we talked about how we can use audit data analytics for that, or ADA, which is really amazing because ADA pretty much revolutionized fraud detection for us. ADA techniques is good at identifying, analyzing, and visualizing patterns and connections better. We also could use network analysis to analyze connections and relationships to identify parties that are involved in fraud. The SEC uses both of these, and they also use big data to look for indications in fraud and sniff out inside triggers. The text stresses that auditors should not get turned off by looking at large data sets because they're afraid of finding too many false positives. This is something that credit card companies also face, but they don't pause every time they encounter a false positive or fraudulent activity on a credit card. So this is definitely something external auditors can also implement in their audit process.
I'm going to talk about the audit process and re-engineering section. Many processes, such as accounts receivable confirmations, are still unchanged from decades ago and not making use of the new technology. Normally, auditors select a sample of accounts and send letters to the account holders asking them to verify the balance. If there's no response, then they have to do alternative procedures. There are issues with this way of doing things because the letter can be subverted from the intended recipient and fraudulently being confirmed. An improvement would be if task is outsourced to service organizations specializing in confirmations. The value is added by the outsourced service having a secure network and therefore guaranteeing that letters aren't subverted or subject to fraud. The service provider will have a large network of authenticated banks and organizations signed up, and this frees up the mundane, low-level tasks for auditors at accounting firms and allows them to do higher-level tasks. If an organization requiring confirmation isn't in the network, then the service company will attempt to authenticate it. And the service companies will continuously build up huge networks by working with different accounting firms, therefore making the confirmations increasingly easier. Another way to make accounts receivable better is confirmations better is if there are shorter collection periods, the accounts receivable can be matched up with the actual receipt, and this would be tested to see if it was really from the customer. This could allow entire groups of receipts to be confirmed at once or rejected. The paper also goes on to talk about how we should encourage audit research and development and provide guidance to practitioners to update audit standards, to encourage use of better technologies, and encourage new models to use employees to better use the new skills required, such as analytical skills and IT skills. Stats, audit analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning will all help in bettering the accounting process. And you should also revise the audit standards to make use of the new technology and to be able to confirm 100% or 100% test the samples. There will be more specialists needed, such as IT evaluation, stats, and actuarial. And the conclusion is that the new technology will allow continuously updated audit opinions for different stakeholders, and regular accounting professionals with the current skill set won't be as needed as the ones that can do different technological skills. And the corporate and audit systems should be coexisting, and that's it.
Give me a hand. Any questions for the group? Anything that struck you out of the article or anything they mentioned? Anybody? Yeah.
I don't know if this is necessary for the group or just a question, but in terms of, in the story, she had all this technology and software that she implemented into her clients working, but there is turnover in auditors. Like a firm will decide to go with one auditor one year, and then 2 years later be off with another one. So the format we have now, the foundations we use now, are easily transferred to new clients. Like we can pick up a new client and just do statistical testing and take out those kinds of things. But if we're talking about implementing huge software platforms into their systems, that turnover, how does the software deal with the turnover?
That's a great question. What do you think?
That's a good question, but I don't know, because like if they put the system into the client, right? Well, maybe it could just stay there if they get a new auditor, for example. I don't know if it would be.
In my opinion, I think not only the technology software due for the auditing is performed for the, maybe it's designed for the ERP or some similar system, they will consider it. If they transfer it to another, maybe they use this company this year, they use the different, maybe they use the SAP. And next year they use the auditing for another company, maybe they use another system. But they have a common way to maybe to extract the information from the system, maybe transfer it to the Excel or something else to help the company to do the auditing. So I think there will have a consideration for that.
That's a great point. Tom Peters said years ago in Thriving on Chaos that if you lock in electronically with your customer, you'll have them for life. And yet the Sarbanes-Oxley mandates that they change auditors. So that's a really good question, because if I put a bunch of technology in and then I change auditors, there might be a whole disruption. And where today it's pretty seamless because everyone's following the same non-statistical sampling method. You just bring the next group of people in and do the same thing. Any other comments on that one? Any other questions? Good question. Okay, a couple comments. One is that this 95% thing that's in the article too. They say you take a sample of 30. I want to double check that in the book, but it says if you take a sample of 30 and you have a 95% confidence level. Well, you do if your sample size is something small. But if I have 300,000 or 1 million accounts payable, accounts receivable transactions, I'm sorry, but a sample of 30 is not a 95% confidence level. In fact, if I took a 95% confidence level and established a sample size with central limit theorem, I would have to double, triple, quadruple the number of auditors I need to do that. And it's an interesting thing that there's no math behind, or statistical, other than theory of some people, behind the idea that n equals 30 starts to approach a normal distribution, and therefore somehow you have about a 95% confidence level. Baloney, you know? And it doesn't work that way in the real world, because when we do samples of 30 on larger data sets, and most accounting data is larger data sets today because of consolidation and stuff, we find thousands of things wrong. So we're not finding, anomalies at a 95% confidence level. So keep that in mind, because that's what they're going to tell you when you get out there. They're going to tell you, oh, sample of 30 was proven statistically. It's not been proven. Look it up on the internet. It's not been proven. It's a theory that some, statisticians have, but it's not. There's no mathematical formula to prove it. And I think that's an important thing, because that we are not finding stuff with samples of 30, and yet we do not have organizations internally or externally to be able to do that. So, yeah. I think that blue sky thing is interesting too. That was good. So I think you guys did a great job. I'd like to see the not reading, and you were reading a little too much, but that's all right. You just work on that. It's so much more interesting when someone's talking to you about something that they thought through, about an idea, versus reading. So just keep working on that. You looked up a lot too. You did good, but I really appreciate you guys really worked hard at getting the concepts. And even if you get a little lost, if you have to go to your notes, that's okay. That projects. That's so important in your career, because you will be presenting in front of your team, in front of senior management, in front of a convention, in front of a training session. You're going to be doing that. So just keep practicing. I think you did a great job of taking, and then also you didn't just dump the whole article on us. You took the things that you thought were interesting and highlighted them. That's what I want you to do. That's part of summarizing something. Wasn't it interesting the way they presented? Was that good? You guys listening? You weren't watching the French Open or something? That's fine. All right, let's give a big hand. So we're going to start out with a little bit about how it was founded, okay? So let me just play this video for you real quick, because I want you to meet the people who founded it. It's two doctors that came up.
Lots and lots of professional athletes who come in here whose only goal as a professional athlete is to reach a number. Top 10 in the world, number 1 in the world. When they don't do well, their identity as a human being is completely imploded. They have no value. The only value they have is winning.
In the early 90s, we had the great fortune to work with one of the top tennis players in the world. 1 year before she came to us, she was number 5. She made a conscious decision that she wanted to be number 1 in the world. She said, all I have to do is bust it. If I get after it and really work hard, I know I can be number 1. And she did. She just busted it for 1 year. She comes across our doorstep here in Florida after 1 year. She's still number 5. She hasn't gone up 1 spot in the rankings. These were the first words out of her mouth. She said, I cannot work any harder than I'm working. Now, can any of us hear that? 1 year after going through our multidimensional training, she worked a lot with Jim on the mental and emotional. She worked with me in the nutrition area, and she worked with our fitness trainers in the gym. She beat Steffi Graf 3 times. She won 2 Grand Slams, and she became number 1 in the world. The kicker to this, though, we didn't get 1 tennis ball with her. It had nothing to do with her execution, her ball striking skills. She was already a good enough ball striker to be number 1. She had to learn how to manage her energy.
Certainly winning, becoming number 1 in the world, is a noble goal. But when you get the right understanding of what it's all about, and the most important element is that you're growing as a human being. You're becoming a person who can actually be a force in the world in a very positive way. And whether you win or whether you lose, you like who you are becoming as a consequence of your interaction in this world. You're really proud of the person that you're becoming on the inside. When that happens, that's where winning comes from. Winning occurs as a consequence of something much bigger.
Now think of that in the context of the workplace, because that's what they've done. Is they basically said, now we're going to take these concepts and apply them to the workplace. So this is a typical student in the PA MBA program in the last week. Okay, what it looks like here. You may not be there yet, but you'll be here soon. So, you know, we have a crisis, and it's not a crisis about time, it's a crisis about energy, okay? So I want you to listen to this one too, okay? What did I do, Tip, to get this to come up? Is it gonna work this way?
The business world today, I think, is experiencing stress at levels that are beyond anything that I've certainly ever seen before. The executives and the thought leaders that come here. The business world today, I think, is experiencing stress at levels that are beyond anything that I've certainly ever seen before. The executives and the thought leaders that come here are tighter wound. They're
These
kind
are
of
usually
fragile
C-level people.
because they're being bombarded on so many different levels. Stress is coming from them at every conceivable level, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. We see people that in organizations that are massive in size, that have been pinnacles of strength and stability, completely evaporate in literally just a few weeks. All of our assumptions have been challenged. We see people who have really a great sense of value for their families, and yet they have so little time to invest in their families, and they are terrorized by the possibility they may not be able to provide for their families. Physically, they feel like they're not taking good care of themselves. On the emotional side, they're bombarded from everywhere. Mentally, they are completely exhausted because people are looking for insights, new solutions, and they simply don't have the creativity that they need to actually solve the riddles. And the riddles are coming every single day. And spiritually, they wonder, what is it all about? Why am I doing this? They have a crisis of purpose that's going deep into their soul.
We have an energy crisis going on in our culture today. If you ask anyone, do you ever feel like you run out of time? They go, absolutely yes. Do you feel like you run out of energy? I mean, are you tired at the end of the day? Absolutely yes. Do you ever go longer than 4 hours without eating? Are there ever days you don't connect with your loved ones the way you'd like to? If so, answer yes. And then to a person, they all answer yes. And then, do you think your values ever get compromised because of your job? In other words, whether it's your family or your volunteering or your faith, whatever it is, do you think it ever gets compromised? And the answer is absolutely yes. That collision, feeling like I run out of time, feeling like I run out of energy, feeling that my routines and my actions are weak, suddenly my values are compromised. For a lot of people, this is a train wreck. They can't sleep at night, but instead of looking at their habits, they're so fried that they'll go to their doctor and they'll ask for sleep medication. Intimacy is out the window. Their connection with their family, gone. We have got to get a handle on the concept of prevention and wellness. We can't just treat the problem. We can prevent the problem through energy management.
So are you tracking with me here? Anybody violently disagree yet? Go back, so let me just go back. Sorry about the technology. So anyway, this is the BA MBA student after last week. All right. And this is some data. Just think about this for a minute. When we look at elite athletes back in the 1960s, when I was a kid, you know, there was this concept of, you know, push yourself harder and harder, and the more you work out, the person who works out the most wins, you know, in any sport or any athletic thing. And employees today, we still have a little bit of that. We've got the, you know, the people who work the longest, who stay until the boss leaves, and put in all these hours, are our best people. And I had people work for me that just impressed the heck out of me. They were working 80 hours a week. One guy came to me and said, Rod, I want to travel 100% of the time, keep me on the road, and I'll do anything. And this guy was a great employee, and he did the work of 2 people for a while. But you know, then he reached a point where he mentally, physically, emotionally went through a divorce. His kids were, you know, out on drugs or whatever, and he just burned out. He lost it, you know. And that's not what life is. Life is not a marathon. Life is a series of engagements, of intense engagement and then recovery. Well, I'm talking to you right now. I got to be on, but I'm gonna, when we take a break, I'm gonna disengage from this or maybe during one of these videos, I'm disengaging from this presentation because I've got to recover. And that's how you got to think of life, in not just in your personal life, but in a business world as well. So then you have all these symptoms of these guys would go through incredible things in sports: depression, negative behaviors, breaking tennis rackets on the ground, throwing clubs around, all that kind of thing. And then the results are shortened careers and and health issues, absenteeism, burnout, lack of productivity, etc. So now today you hear a lot more about athletes that are pacing themselves, that have training routines that include recovery. They improve performance by training less and doing other types of things like this Human Performance Institute, like meditation, like whatever. Yoga, you hear these top athletes are doing yoga things now to help with the recovery process. And employees in the future, we've got to learn, it was mentioned earlier, there's no divide between work and your personal life now. I'm on the freaking phone at 11 o'clock at night answering emails for this new venture I'm doing here, and I'm part-time. What am I doing? It doesn't end. People want to have better balance. And as I shared at the beginning of this class, I believe you are the generation that has to change this. Because I was the baby boomers, we're your parents, we're the work to live generation. We just, went in and said, okay, accountants make good money, I'm going to be an accountant, and you work 90 hours a week your first 5 years in the firm. I'm exaggerating a little bit, and you just, and it's all about the work. And if you miss your kids' games or whatever, that's okay, you don't have a relationship with your, wife or husband or girlfriend or boyfriend because you work too much. That's just the price you have to pay to get to the top here. But your generation's saying, no, that's not what I want. My relationships are important to me, and they should be. And my kids are important to me, and they should be. And my spouse is important to me, and they should be. So that's where, and I think that paradigm needs to be changed, because the people running these corporations today are people from my generation that sort of went through it. And it's a little bit of a hazing in that we say, I went through that, so by golly, you're going to go through it as well. You're going to do what I did. And that's unfortunate. But we need to change it. I shared that my segue into doing this stuff and analytics had nothing to do with wanting to improve the bottom line for the company I was working for or to change the world. It had to do with I wanted to get off the road because I was traveling all the time and I was working ridiculous hours. And don't apologize for that. I'm not talking about being lazy and not doing stuff. And that's what you get accused of sometimes when you suggest these things. But don't let that deter you because it needs to change. At this Human Performance Institute, they told us that 3/4 that they did complete bios on us, complete physicals, weight and blood pressure and sugar levels and all this other stuff. And they said that 3/4 of the C-level executives running top companies today, 3/4 of them, have serious health problems. And they don't look like they have serious health problems, men and women, but they have serious health problems. 3/4 of them that come to these institutes. And health management is a big issue today in the workplace. So, and here's a few statistics. Disengaged workforce decreases operating income 33%. And it does. Disengaged employees cost businesses $300 billion a year, because if you're not taking care of yourself, you're going to be sick, you're going to be out, you're going to lose your relationships, and you're going to spend a lot of time in divorce court and trying to figure your life out. And then employees believe that it does impact engagement. So this, the reason Siemens and other companies sent people to this, and Johnson & Johnson bought this company, this institute, is because it really gets results on the bottom line. They're not doing it because they just love people and they're benevolent. They're doing it because it really does make a difference. 54% of senior executives are disengaged. 65% of employees are disengaged and don't give their best effort. And this is scary, 21% are actually toxic, meaning they're sabotaging what you're trying to do. And you'll see that when you get in the workplace. You'll see people who are actually, embittered or upset for both business reasons and personal reasons, and are actually sabotaging what companies are trying to do. What do you think that costs a year? And you're paying them to do that. So this was another survey that was done. 62% of respondents reported burnout, emotional and physical exhaustion, low morale. 78% are concerned about their people's capacity to manage work demands in the coming year. And you think about companies like Google and Amazon, some of these best companies to work for. They create a culture that actually supports people, in most cases, supports people, but they still have issues with discrimination and gender inequality and some of those things. But it supports people in having a balance in your life and working through those things. So full engagement is the acquired ability to bring your best and your full and best energy right now. Okay? And one of the studies that came out of this was they were looking at things like multitasking. I know we all pride ourselves. I can, talk to my girlfriend and take care of, my paper and study for my tax exam all at the same time. But a study from Johns Hopkins showed that people who multitask, defined as trying to do two important things at the same time, the problem with texting and driving, are actually like 40% less efficient at either one. In other words, you'd be better off to focus on talking to your girlfriend and then focus on your tax exam, and you'd be more efficient if you did it that way over the time. So now I'm guilty of that one too. I'm multitasking a lot, but it's okay if it's something, if one of them's a no-brainer thing, but if it's two important things, then yeah, question. No.
Sorry, I'm just curious, you mentioned about the best places to work, lists and stuff. I mean, I've read different things. I've read that, like, some of them are bribes, some of them are, I guess, how accurate do you think? Do you think that's truly accurate in your experience?
You mean when they say these are the best places to work?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I heard a guy say the other day that worked at Google that said, they give you free, I love this Libra place that I'm helping with right now. They have organic food, home refrigerator with all organic food. You help yourself to anything you want at any time. This is good quality, expensive food. I don't have a lot of organic food. But they said at Google that, they have dinner, but they don't serve dinner until 8 o'clock at night. So, you kind of have to stay long if you want to get dinner at 8 o'clock at night, and so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I haven't worked in some of those companies, but, if you've been in a dynamic environment, that you have flexibility, you're held accountable, you have responsibility and time, and you're held accountable for what you accomplish around the goals, not for where you are. You ever work somewhere where someone's saying, hey, Janky was not at her desk, or she's making personal phone calls too much at work here. Well, what's the problem? The problem is she's probably doesn't like what she's doing and doesn't have enough work to do. So the problem isn't that she's making personal phone calls; it's that she's not challenged in the right area, that kind of thing. So yeah, I don't know. Good question. Has anyone ever had a job that they absolutely loved? No. My brother has a saying that if you only hate 25% of your job, he's a partner with us. But he said, if you ever only hate 25% of your job, don't complain. You got a great job. Yeah.
Oh, no, you asked me.
You had a job you really loved.
Yeah.
Why'd you love it?
Because I was working on a Broadway show where the entire class was British, and they gave us, we had a lot of outing, also had a Tony party, and it only lasted 3 months, the show. That's fine.
And, there's a book called Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. It's a great book. I encourage you to read it. And it talks about how if you're in a job where you don't have a sense of control, the people at higher levels in organizations, C-levels, live longer on average than people at lower levels of an organization where they don't have control. And the thesis is that if you're a C-level executive, even though you may be working ridiculous hours, you have a sense of control over your life. If you're an accounts payable clerk in a real structured, hierarchical company with someone micromanaging, it's really frustrating. You're always fearing that you're going to lose your job or that you're not going to have your job. And what your body does when you're under stress is it releases cortisol. And that's the drug, that's the thing, it's the fight and flight drug that allows it. 9-year-old kid to pick a car up and let someone get out. But it also destroys your immune system over time. And what he says in his book is if you're in that situation, get out, change it, and be an agent of change and with other people in an appropriate way. But if you can't change it, get out. because it's not worth it. It's not worth destroying your health over your job. That'll never be a good proposition for you. Okay? So, pull out a piece of paper. We're going to take a quick quiz test on the exam. And I want you to answer these 4 questions just with a true or false. Okay? So, skillfully investing time in things and people you care about spawns harmony and fulfillment. Yes or no? True or false? Just go ahead and write down your answers real quick. So those are 4 questions. Just read those. Don't analyze them. Just read them and put down your initial answers. Okay, we got it? Everyone? Yep. Okay. All right, let's see how smart you guys really are, okay? By the way, everyone put their name tags on. I'm still working on getting everyone's name here. I want to make sure I have everyone's name. Okay, first question. Skillfully investing time in things and people you care about spawns harmony and fulfillment. True or false? True. True? Anyone false? Okay. Now you got that one wrong. No. Managing energy, not time, is the key to extraordinary results. Our most critical resource is energy, because we all have the same amount of time, right? We all have 24 hours in a day. So this whole idea of managing time, if you just keep adding things and you don't have the energy to fulfill what you're doing, it's not gonna work. So I'm gonna play one more video here. Maybe this I can get this to work. Where they talk about this from the Institute.
We are obsessed as a country, as a nation, in being on time because we think time is the ultimate value maker. The fact is, the investment of time has zero value. The only way time has valence is in its intersection with energy. If the energy is aligned with the time and aligned with the mission, time becomes priceless.
Time management alone never lived up to its expectations. All time management did, it took us from being absent to being present. How many times have we been present for a meeting and not been in the meeting? And in our personal lives, how many times have we been present for a child's game or a child's concert or an event, but we haven't been there? You know, I've worked with so many executives who leave work early. They go to their son or daughter's game, but they've got their laptop open during the game. They've managed their time, but they haven't managed their energy. Energy management takes you from being present to being engaged. When you bring your full and your best energy right here, right now, that's engagement. Engagement brings your life, literally to the surface. It brings everything that matters to the surface, and you really become alive with everything that matters most.
Okay, does that make sense? The first question there? Okay, next question. Or first let me show you this. This is an interesting chart. So you guys are here.
When you think about the word resiliency, to a lot of people it has different meanings. There's flexibility, which means range of motion, but resiliency.
I hope that's going to stop it. Okay, this chart is really interesting because you guys, a lot of you are at a stage of life where this is your demand is the orange line here, yellow line, and red is your capacity to manage your energy level in life, kind of. Okay, so there's a statistic that around age 30, it's actually 25 or so, or maybe 27 for women, and a little older for men, because us men mature slower than women. Did you guys know that? Kind of obvious, isn't it? But and so what happens is the peak of your capacity and energy, so you're a child and you're growing up and you're getting stronger, your physical peak for most people is somewhere around 27 to 30 years old. That's where you are in the best shape, you feel indestructible, right? But the demand on your time, okay, so you start out and you're a teenager learning to play the guitar, and then you get a little better in life and you go to college, you go to your MBA program, you get married, you have kids, you get a mortgage for $4,500 a month, and life starts to get a little more stressful, right? So what happens is, while your capacity for energy after 30 starts to go down, your demand for your energy keeps going up, okay? And what happens is that gap between here is what causes stress and fatigue, because suddenly you don't have the same energy level that you had before, and yet the demands keep growing. So you have two choices. You're either going to keep your energy level high, raise your energy level, or somehow, not have all those commitments. Okay? Does that make sense? I mean, that's not rocket science, but it really does, in life. So that's kind of what we're talking about. Okay, the next question was, the human spirit is fueled from a different energy source than the physical body. So if I'm going to run a marathon, or I'm going to have an intimate conversation with my wife, what is that a different type of energy? True or false? True. Okay, true. You guys got that one wrong again. No, it's the same energy. Okay. So if we manage our energy at a consistent level, it takes the same energy to have an intimate conversation with my wife as it does to run a marathon. And if my energy level is low, and this is why this is important, that's when you're going to say the wrong thing to your wife or boyfriend or girlfriend. It's when you're going to go off in a meeting and say the wrong thing to someone that you shouldn't have said it to. It's when you're going to have road rage in the traffic jam because you haven't eaten in 4 hours and you're starving, and someone pulls in front of you, and suddenly what wouldn't bother you before is you're irate with it. So it's the same energy. So if your energy's low, you're not going to be good at having an intimate conversation with your boyfriend or girlfriend. You're not going to be good at running a marathon, and you're not going to be really effective in a classroom, making a presentation, doing a meeting, whatever. That's kind of the concept. Do you guys buy that? Is that all right? Okay. Keep going. All right. The best way to think about one's business career is as a marathoner rather than a sprinter. True or false? I gave that one away before, man. So no. And here's my problem in life, and I was a big runner. I used to run a lot. I would try and be just totally focused and engaged for hours on end. If I played you in tennis, Scott, I would be totally focused on beating you in tennis for 2.5 hours. No, I wouldn't. I'd always lose, because you cannot be totally focused for 2.5 hours on anything, including an advanced auditing course. You have to disengage and then re-engage. You can't be on. No one can be on all the time. And that was the point with these tennis players. They were trying to be totally focused all the time. You can't do it. We're not built that way. So life is a series of sprints, or of intense engagements and then recovery. Okay. And when we look at this, and we're going to talk about these just briefly in 4 areas, is physically. So I have to have the physiological things going on in my body so I have energy. Emotionally, I can't be a roller coaster emotionally, or I'm going to have trouble. Mentally, I have to have the right mental situational awareness to know where I'm at. And then spiritually, and when they talk about spiritually, they're not talking about any particular religion or anything. They're talking about having a mission, okay? Having a vision for where you're going in your life. And I encourage all of you to have that at this stage of your life. And that's a compelling picture of a preferable future, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Because if you aim at nothing in life, you'll hit it every time. And if you don't have a mooring or a way you're going, you're never going to get there. And you'll see that in large companies. Large companies spend a lot of time, a lot of money on strategic initiatives, on strategy and planning, on business development. And they may never do half the things they put on that list, but it sends them in a direction, and they go there. If you don't have a vision, you dwell aimlessly. You have no direction. So that's what we'll talk about. And so energy expenditure must be balanced with recovery. So and you don't grow unless you push yourself beyond. So stress is not a bad thing. Unless you push yourself beyond what you think are your limits, you won't increase your energy. And I'll explain that in a minute. Let me pray this one about how important recovery is. So.
I believe that one of the most brilliant things that happened in the last half of the last century in the game of tennis was what Jim did in the mid-'80s, and he called it the 16-second cure, where he studied the top players in the world.
And what I was looking for is what separated the really great competitors from those that were not so great, from the poor competitors. So we isolated cameras on the during point time, and we tried to look at what was occurring there that would help us, let's say the top 50 players in the world. And I will tell you, there was nothing there. You could see biomechanical efficiencies and so forth, but all of them had great biomechanics and great movement. It was very difficult to determine who were the great competitors, who were the ones that could actually pull their best out at the critical moments just looking at that during point time.
In tennis, when you play a long match, what they found was that only 35% of the time are you hitting balls. 65% of the time you're not hitting balls. Then what are you thinking about? And that's what Jim was able to put structure around.
Quite by accident, we started looking at what was referred to as dead time in tennis, when people are simply walking from one side of the court to the other and going from place to place on the court, which there was no action. There was nothing being played at that time. But we began to realize that that was the single most important opportunity for gaining insights into the psychology of the competitor. This dead time actually was an opportunity to view the mechanisms of recovery following a dose of stress. The during point time was a dose of stress. The between point time could be viewed as a period of strategic recovery if they used it wisely. I mean, it was so obvious that all of the best competitors were using the opportunity for recovery in a much more strategic way.
If they made a mistake, stage one, there was a positive physical response. He saw players image the correction. Why is that important? I love to use this example. If you think about the Eiffel Tower and you get the Eiffel Tower in your mind, now get it out of your mind. It's impossible to get the Eiffel Tower out of your mind unless you replace the image. Step two, relax. Take a couple of seconds, couple of deep breaths. Step three, mental preparation. In other words, now this is where you'll see the player look into the court, try to decide where they're going to serve, how hard they're going to serve, what kind of spin. And then stage four, rituals. That, in other words, this is where you see some players do this. This is where they bounce the ball. And what we find is those four structured areas, positive physical response, relax, prepare, and then rituals, all happen within 16 seconds.
The poor competitors, their eyes would wander, they would show all of their emotions on their sleeve. If they were up, they'd be up. If they weren't, their rackets would go down, their shoulders would be rounded. They showed discouragement on their face, their heads, their eyes would roll. But if they were upset, angry, if they started choking and showed fear and all those things, the recovery mechanism was blocked. None of that was evident on the world's best competitors. So we began to teach players how to strategically recover more effectively and to balance the stress recovery waveforms more evenly. And we saw a significant change and improvement in their ability to perform under pressure and their ability to play to their full potential as competitors. We took that into golf, into baseball, into professional hockey, into a wide array of sports. And then extrapolated that into the real world for all of us.
I often ask people in business and in life, how many 1 minute to 2 minute intervals do you think you have in a day when you don't have to be on? A lot, some, or none? And the answer is a lot. So the key here is that if you learn how to manage recovery, the 16-second cure can change your life and give you more energy than you've ever dreamt of having during what you might think is a normally difficult day.
Okay, you guys agree with that? Does that sound like pop culture or something, or does that make sense? Yeah.
So, just using the example of tennis, I know that you said that there's the 4 stages of those 16 seconds. You're getting your mind off of the game. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, go ahead, Fred.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, I was going in a different track, but regarding like being calm and not being so aggressive. I think some people actually like that because they communicate that they're a formidable competitor.
Oh, you mean to intimidate the opponent?
Yeah, that's another thing. But again, maybe they're disengaging because they feel like they have control.
Yeah.
But you do see people.
Yeah. I think what he's talking about there is, that's a good point. Your question is, you are recovering. You may think about, just go through emotion there as part of your recovery, as part of your relaxing. But they also talk about here having some of that 16 seconds is just go to your happy place. Just disengage. It's okay to think through maybe a next thing, but don't. He's talking about not beating yourself up, not staying emotionally and physically so engaged in the game that you're wearing down your energy level. So there are some things you can do, you should still do maybe to focus, but also they talk in here too about just having some just clean recovery time to just let yourself actually rejuvenate a little bit. But you don't think about that in life, do you? You think about I'm taking my 2-week vacation and I'm going to recover and I'm going to come back to work with my tanks filled and ready to fire away. But that's sometimes the most stressful things in life are vacations. Because you go on vacation and my wife thinks I'm crazy, but I used to keep a little health record of whenever I got a cold or got sick, and then I used to try and keep track of when it would happen. And interestingly, it didn't happen when I was always when I was under a lot of stress physically or at work or something. I'd get sick when I went on vacation because I'd get all positively excited about going on vacation. We're going to the Bahamas. Oh boy, this is going to be great. And then I get a cold. Why? Because what happened? I'm so excited that I'm releasing cortisol in my system and I'm breaking down my immune system, and now I'm getting sick. Okay, so good questions. All right, so this whole idea is that you have to stress a little bit to build your energy level, to increase the capacity of your energy level. Interestingly, people and you must recover every 80 or 60 to 80 or 100 minutes or so. Do something to recover, whether you're in class, whether you're doing your job, whether you're working out. And by the way, they're finding now that people that run marathons, for example, it's not good for you because we weren't made to run for 3 hours straight. And what happens is it can scar your heart. And a lot of people that run marathons don't live that long because we weren't made. We were made to sort of as the gatherer hunter concept. We were made to kind of chase the rabbit with a spear, catch the rabbit, eat it, and then go chase another rabbit. So we're not recovering. If you're running for 3 hours, you're probably not good for your body. And there's theory about that too. And then people that do shift work, that have rotating shifts. One of my son-in-laws is an air traffic controller at Newark here, and he has to work these rotating shifts. They live 10 to 12 years shorter lifespans than people who don't do shift work. And the reason is your body never gets to recover because you're constantly getting out of control. And I had an experience personally. I worked for Armstrong Boat Industries as an accounting supervisor, and I walked in the door and we were doing budgets and standards. We were doing some reorganization in the accounting department, and the controller left the company. Not because of it, she left, and I was out there. I didn't even know what the bathroom was in the place, and I'm responsible for the clothing and everything because they couldn't get anyone to come out to California because of the expense, the cost out there. So I told the manager of the facility, I said, "Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it." And I worked with the auditors, and they were actually a big help to me. But I started working 7 days a week, 16 hours a day. Thank God I wasn't married at the time. My wife, my girlfriend was back in so it didn't matter. And I was like burning out. And I was going up to the team that I had 8 people on my team, and I was saying, "Hey, if you need any help, you gotta get through this. Let's just really plug. If you need any help, just let me know." But my eyes were saying, I'm working my ass off, and you're gonna too, and we gotta get this done, And one day, after working all this unbelievable hours, all I did was eat, run on the beach. That was my thing. I lived by the beach, and I was even on Saturdays riding 20 miles just to get the frustration out of my system. And one day the controller called me in, or the plant manager, facility manager called me in. I thought he was going to say, "Rod, thank you, you're doing a great job. Thanks for plugging while we're waiting to get someone else in here." And instead he said, "Rod, I've had all 8 of your employees in here complaining that you're pushing them too hard." I didn't even think I was. I thought, but I was. And that was a wake-up call for me that people are way more important than processes, and that working harder instead of smarter isn't the solution, because I was becoming less effective. I was just burning out. And you guys may find yourself in that situation, trying to make your mark in your first job or with the firms or something, working ridiculous hours. Don't do it. It's not worth it. I mean, I'm not saying don't plug when there's a need to plug, but if that becomes perennial or that becomes your life, your work, your job, you get out of it. You can't. Okay. So last question: protecting yourself and others from high stress is an important part of your leadership. True or false? Well, we're learning by now, right? False. How many think it's false? Okay. We don't want to avoid stress. Okay. Stress is an opportunity for growth. Some stress is good. You get the idea of people who are working jobs and then they retire, and what happens? They die because they have no purpose in life. If things that push us the most, help us, no discomfort, not no pain, no gain, because pain is a warning from your body that something's not going right. But no discomfort, no gain. If you don't have, when you go out and work out, we'll talk about the exercise part in a minute here. So the way it works is this: is that when in life, if your current capacity or energy level is right here, it's going to stay there unless you do something, in the case of, say, exercise, to challenge it a little bit and recover, and then it's going to raise that energy level so you'll have more energy to bring your good and best energy. I mean, my motivation now is I've got a grandbaby that's 9 months old. I want to have energy to run with my grandchild, my granddaughter. So, and I know if I just, eat screaming yellow zonkers and gain 40 pounds, and I'm not going to have the energy to do it. I mean, I'm already way down on that curve, and I have a lot less energy than you guys do. But I work hard at making sure I have energy because I need energy to do things, and I enjoy life more. I may not live very long. I don't even care in that sense. I'd rather have enjoy the time I have and have energy during that time. So okay. So let's talk a little bit about nutrition now, okay? So I hope those donuts were good. So, and what we're going to talk about is eating strategically, or managing energy by how eating affects how you manage energy. And again, disagree with me on this. You brought up a good point. Challenge some of this if you disagree with it. I mean, you don't have to look very far to read in any beauty magazine, men's health, women's health, articles and anywhere. It's all the same advice, right? It's eat more fruits and vegetables and less of this. And, I mean, there's not any new news out there, So let's talk about eating strategically. And this, again, full disclosure, is where I struggle still, because I still eat a big meal in the evening. And it's the worst thing you can do, because then your heart's working all night when you're supposed to be recovering and resting, pumping blood to digest food, So, but And by the way, everything I share here on the food and the exercise part is 80-20. That means 20% of the time, do whatever you want to do. Enjoy the donuts, have, but 80% of the time, try and follow this, and that's good. And so when I go out to a restaurant, I don't worry about ordering the, chocolate decadence or something, because that's my 20%, and I enjoy that. So go ahead and enjoy it. You don't want to get this. You want to run this, not it run you. So the first one is eat light and often. Eat small amounts and eat often. That stabilizes blood glucose, and we'll talk about stabilization there. It improves metabolism. It controls craving. It maintains muscle mass. It prevents excessive fat storage. Okay. So the way that looks is on what's called a glycemic index, which just is your blood sugar level. You want to keep that in this range here, because then your energy is going to be constant. Okay, wherever your energy level is, it's going to be constant. If you buy down a couple of cans of Jolt and some Red Bull, your energy level is going to go way up here, which can cause you to make poor decisions, to overreact to things. It might make you feel like Superman for a little while, but it's also going to drop you down here. And these guys, these sumo wrestlers, people think they eat a lot, and I guess they do, but you know how they eat? They skip breakfast and lunch, and then they eat 10,000 calories for dinner and go to bed. And that guarantees that you will weigh 450 pounds, whatever these guys weigh, not 650 pounds. And this is an interesting physiological thing, that your body, the way kind of we were designed, is if you go for more than 3 or 4 hours without eating, your body has a survival system. And what it says is that Scott has not eaten in 4 or 5 hours, so he's in starvation mode. meaning maybe he's not gonna eat again. So we're gonna burn, when we need a demand for energy, we're gonna burn Scott's muscle tissue, okay? Instead of fat. Not all that, it does burn fat too, but it'll burn some of your muscle tissue. But if you take a little snack that Taylor has here, there we go, and I have mine over there, and you just eat a small number of calories, that tells your body, hey, Scott is not in survival mode, go ahead and burn fat. So you actually burn more fat if you eat small amounts on a regular basis instead of large amounts once or twice a day. See, I have mine. So I carry this everywhere I go. Yes, ma'am. Very good. Okay, so how do you eat? And I'm going to give you a break to go eat here in a minute, okay? But how do you eat? So this is one of the guidelines that they kind of give this thing. I'm just sharing with what they share with us. So you want to have your fruits and vegetables, your proteins, and your grains. And I'd argue too that now this is modified a little because people are doing less on the grains. I don't eat much grain because it made my knees swell. My knees are much better since I, the paleo kind of thing, but whatever. And what it says is, 20% protein, 40% fruits and vegetables, and maybe higher and a little less on the grain. And then sustained glycemic index. So if I go over here to Ju and I hold up her hand, okay, and you compare her hand with my hand, and I'm a little bit bigger than her, you can notice that this part of her hand is smaller than mine here. So a guideline to know how much to eat, because portion size. Do you know that the Cheesecake Factory, the average woman in America should get somewhere around 1,800 to 2,100 calories. The average man, 2,200 to 2,500 calories a day. And the average entree in Cheesecake Factory is like 3,600 calories. So, that's just one meal. So your whole caloric intake, that's the problem in America, the portion size. And the other thing I struggled with growing up Irish Catholic was, don't you eat everything in your plate because people are starving in Biafra. And I had that problem right up into traveling on business. I would be at a restaurant and I had no refrigerator to take it home to. So I was like, I gotta eat this. This is going to waste, And it was going to waste, but so what they say is, roughly use the palm of your hand to determine what a serving is. So, a protein, one handful grains, one fruits and vegetables, about the size of the palm of your hand, not piled up to here, but just the palm of your hand. So, and you have, two of the fruits, or maybe 3 of the fruits, 1 of the grains, and 1 of the proteins, every day, right? And then eat strategically. And this is important to your question earlier, that if you're going to eat things like rice, for example, is very high glycemic. So eat rice with some type of protein, and it lowers the glycemic level and doesn't go out of that range for you. So, for example, these are glycemic indexes. So if you're going to eat candy, eat something like fruit or beans or nuts and seeds. That's why this is a good snack, because you can eat something glycemic and also have some nuts and seeds in it. If you eat white potatoes, have a vegetable with it. If you eat, cake or pie, have some, nutrition bar or something with it, and that will lower the glycemic impact. Otherwise, it shoots it way up. It's like if you drink alcohol on a full meal, it dilutes the alcohol a little bit and then just drinking on it. Okay, so, and you can look this up in the internet, look up glycemic indexes, and try and mix foods together that are, like if you eat bread and peanut butter, peanut butter and jelly with bread, that's a good because the peanuts have a low glycemic while the wheat has a higher glycemic. Okay, so you mix glycemic things so you don't. The idea is you don't want to shoot your energy way up, and you don't want to go long periods of time without eating and shoot your energy way down, because that's when you're gonna do the wrong thing. You're gonna say the wrong thing. You're gonna go off in the traffic jam. Does that make sense? So you just try and keep it and so this is the thing. If you don't have that snack, you're going to drop the glycemic down. And that snack is about 100 to 150 calories is all you need to tell your body, burn fat. Burn fat, don't burn, and if you look at one of your energy bars, so, 5 or 6 almonds on my hand is probably 75 calories, okay? Or maybe 6 or 7 is 100 calories. And half of one of those energy bars is probably between 100 and 150 calories. So just eat one of them every few hours and you'll find your energy level will be more consistent. And you know how this feels, and this again is my problem, you know, and especially, in fact, I eat at home a lot more now. Mostly my wife and I buy organic food, and we throw nothing out, because, you know, it's expensive to buy organic food, and I don't know, some of it's got chemicals, I'm sure, but I'm just trying to avoid chemicals as much as anything, but you know, this thing, you know, if you wanna lose weight, feel satisfied, not hungry anymore, food lasts 2 to 3 hours. If you're feeling of hunger and, you know, and your stomach growls, then you eat. If you want to maintain your weight, just eat until you feel full, not stuffed. And my problem is I eat so fast that by the time I realize I'm full, I've already overeaten. You know? My wife eats really slow, and that's a great thing. You can eat slow. I'm trying to do that. It's a habit. And of course, you get to this, you know, sort of food coma thing where you go out and, you know, at the Cheesecake Factory, you eat your whole thing, and then you have a piece of cheesecake. So that just gives you a guideline there. Okay, now we're going to talk about fitness. Teaches is, you know, having rituals, and around. I want to talk briefly about sleep. You should always get 7 to 9 hours of sleep, or 7 to 8 hours of sleep. This idea that, oh, I only get 3 hours of sleep, and I'm, you know, the physiology says no. You know, maybe there's some people that are that way, and actually elite athletes can sleep a little less because their heart rates are so low. My heart rate is like 48 to 52, and I went to get blood a month ago, and they wouldn't take my blood because my blood pressure was so low and my heart rate was low. And that's because I do interval training. You know? But think about it, your heart's kind of like the starter on your car. You know, it's going to work so many times. And if your heart's beating at 50 beats a minute versus 86 because you have high blood pressure and you're out of shape, you know, how long is your heart last? I don't know. You know? But with sleep, also have a ritual. You know, so my ritual is I read before I go to bed. You know, and sometimes it takes me 6 months to get through a book, but I read 10 minutes before I go to bed, and that helps me just well. And this idea of, you know, on weekends I sleep till 1 o'clock isn't good for you either. The physiology says, because it throws off your body patterns. You sleep about, you know, I wake up, I can go to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I wake up at 6:30 because that's when I get up every morning anyway. You know, so and I don't use an alarm clock, so my body's used to that. So get enough sleep. That's an important part of the physical. Okay, so you know, strategic movements: take the stairs, not the elevator. Take a walk after lunch. Walk to another apartment. Don't email. Stand while you're working. I have a stand-up desk at home. That's why I told you guys, don't sit for 3 hours in a class. Stand up, move around a little bit. I have a stand-up desk, and I stand up at work. You know, at both at this job. But I always get up. Don't sit for more than 60 or 90 minutes at a time. They actually have shown physiologically that you impair your cognitive ability because the blood flow by sitting down to your head gets actually reduced, and it affects your effectiveness too. So you know, avoid drive-through. So I always walk whenever I can. Take a shower, not a bath. You burn 5 times the calories standing up than you do sitting down. You know, that's pretty incredible. So that's a picture of me at my stand-up desk down in Florida, and out that window is a view of the ocean down here. So I have just a condo in Florida, and I have a view of the ocean. So that's my stand-up desk. So I work from my stand-up desk there when I'm home, and then I have that little stool there so I can sit down when I want to sit down. So, okay. And I do that about every 30 minutes. And by the way, it's not healthy to only stand. Then you affect your back or something. So, you know, safe exercise, planned use of movement. This is the app I was telling you about. I didn't know I had a slide of it. So it's called the 7-Minute Workout. And it has this guy, Chris, who trains all these professional athletes, and he shows you what to do. I just hate doing calisthenics kind of thing. So I only do it if it's raining out, and I can't go outside, I can't go on a bike, I can't go run, you know, whatever. So, but I do use that. So, and then of course, types of exercise: aerobic, resistance, flexibility training. It doesn't matter what the exercise is, other than you should work all your muscle groups and that kind of thing. Okay. But remember, when you're doing these things, it's this idea of interval. If you want to build your energy level, you want to go out of your comfort zone. So part of the workout should be in your comfort zone. You know, the picture of someone drinking a milkshake, sitting on a stationary bike and reading the GQ magazine or something. You know, that's really not getting a workout. All you're doing is burning calories, and then you eat more and you burn more calories. You know, so So do interval training and make sure you recover. And you can make the intervals short. So you even say 20 minutes of interval training. And I'm older than you guys, so I recover, I usually, if I do 1 minute, I recover for 2 or 3 minutes. You may be comfortable just doing 1 minute and recovering 1 minute, but just don't do it for more than 20 minutes and take the next day off. And you'll be amazed at how much more energy you have. And because from doing all that running, I would be at school. I remember at University of Maryland, I'm down there, and at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm falling asleep because I ran 7 miles, and then I did another aerobic workout or something, and played racquetball, and I was just exhausting myself, and I was wearing out my joints, so it's not what you want to do. Okay? And the way to tell if you're stressing yourself on doing reps is, roughly, 8 to 12 reps. And you should get, to know where to get, you get about 90% capacity so that you can't really hold a conversation. So I mean, talking to you like this when I'm at, I can't just say, hey, how you doing? Did you have a good day? I'm going to be talking like this because during that minute, you should be at that point, So, and of course, check with your doctor and all that before you do it, so you half the class is only half the time. And then, try and work all your muscle groups. And that's what's frustrating, you get an injury. And what I do is I get an injury in my shoulder, so I do the bike riding. I get an injury in my leg, so I do the paddle boarding, And I like the paddle boarding because and I surf too, but it's core. You have to stand like this and you're pushing, on that, So if any of you guys want to come down and paddleboard sometime, come on down. In fact, I want to tell you, if anyone wants to, on July 3rd, on Monday, we have a fireworks they do in front of my house down 508 Ocean Avenue, and you're all invited if you want to come down. You can come down on a train or whatever and watch the fireworks at 9 o'clock, or come down and use the beach during the day. Seriously, you're all invited if you want to come down. I'm just going to have some drinks and refreshing. It's not a full meal or anything. You're all invited. So, all right, so energy management, mental, emotional, and spiritual. So now let's talk a little bit about the mental part. So you got the physical part, it's interval, it's not overdoing it, and it's recovery. The interval's recovery during the exercise, and do it every other day because your body has to rebuild. So you don't want to be, in the gym every day. So now let's talk about this mental, okay? And that's where I already talked to you about the multitasking, okay? Mental and emotional. And emotional is kind of patience, listening, etc. Okay, but this idea of multitasking, is really not mental discipline. It actually impairs your ability to do the things you're doing, the important tasks well. Okay, and then the spiritual part is kind of this, this visioning part, this compelling picture of a preferable future. And I encourage all of you guys to think about, what is James doing 5 years from now? Where are you going to be? And have a plan, and write that plan down, and write it down in a smart way that's specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-based. So, and I've done this with my wife for 33 years. We've been married. Every year we write down a vision of where we want to go this year, what we want to accomplish in 2 to 5 years. And the things we've written down, we've accomplished all of them except for learning to swim. She never learned. She grew up Amish, all over Amish. She never learned to swim. So, that we never accomplished. But everything else, whether it's getting out of debt, whether it's paying for college, whether it's going on a vacation, whether it's buying a car, whether it's making a real estate investment, everything that we've written down, we've accomplished. The things we just said, someday we're going to do that, we never got to. And I encourage you to just have a compelling picture of a preferable future and be specific about it. I want to be making $150,000 and buy a home and be living in Hawaii or wherever you want to live, by December of 2021. Okay, that's your vision. That's where I want to go. Okay, and the other, but also in that vision, it's not just about your career. It's also about what you want to accomplish in your life. So, we see a lot of times, we don't achieve our objectives, or our actions are inconsistent with our objectives. So, for example, in the workplace, I say, I want to be a good husband. I want to have a good relationship with my kids. I want to be an outstanding risk officer in the company I work with, or software developer for blockchain, okay? But what happens is I'm tired all the time. I'm not eating right. I'm not getting exercise. I'm not sleeping enough. So my actions are very inconsistent with what my goal to achieve my goal is. I don't have time to spend with my kids because I'm always at the office, or I can't spend time with my spouse because I'm working too much. So our actions aren't consistent with what we're, and that's kind of what having a vision. Spend time with my kids, whatever. And there was a story they told that I thought was cool with this. Accomplish your mission no matter what it takes. Okay? And your mission, that vision may change, and that's okay, but all it does is give you a mooring. You're heading in that direction. You may decide that you want to have the $100,000 house in Bloomfield, New Jersey instead of Hawaii. That's okay. You just change it. You only change it once a year. But they told this story, it was really, and it's a true story, down at this institute to help people understand finding their mission. What they would tell them was these are professional athletes, okay, and they say there's a white fence down a mile down here, and we'd like you to run down there and touch the white fence and make it back in 18 minutes or something, so a 9-minute mile. Now, any professional athlete can run that mile. And they'd say to them, can you do that? And they'd say, yeah, we can do that, no problem. These are big football players. They had it on a video, they showed it. And then they said, are you going to achieve your mission at all costs? And they said, yep, we will get down, touch that fence, we'll get back. He said, okay, just one thing you ought to know is this is southern Florida, and there are, or central Florida, and there are alligators, in the water around there, so just be careful about that. And they said, okay, no problem. And they said, okay, on your mark, it said, oh, and sometimes there's snakes too, so be careful about snakes. And once in a while, very rare, there's wild boar. I actually shot 2 wild boar last fall down in Florida. But anyway, but is that going to deter you? No, we're going to accomplish our mission at all costs. So they show these 3 NFL players running down the thing, and they get partway down, and they hear this wild boar from the woods, and they stop, and they look around, and then they hear it again, and they turn around, they run back to the guy, and the guy said, what happened? Did you accomplish your mission? And he said, no, we heard a wild boar. We saw a wild boar. And the guy said, oh gosh. So then they did the same thing with first responders and Navy SEALs, military. And these guys went and heard the same thing. They stopped and they slowly walked toward the woods cautiously, and they looked in the woods and they saw a guy with a wild boar call in a tree up there, calling wild boar. And they went and touched the fence and got back within 18 minutes. So they accomplished their mission. And so what it's saying is, whenever you, and they had this on video, it was really cool to see these big football players go, gosh, a wild boar, and they ran, But, so whatever it costs, accomplish your mission, So what it looks like is this, they encouraged us to write, this is the spiritual part, the mission part. They encouraged us to write down our old story. I'm too busy to spend time with my wife. I'm too tired to spend time with my kids. I'm too burned out to do anything else at work because they give me these audit programs to do, and they don't give me enough time to do it. They don't give me enough people to do it, and I'm just frustrated. So, Ernest Hemingway say, in order to be a great writer, a person must have a built-in shock-proof crap detector, because that's what it is. So we actually wrote down what our current story is, our situation. And again, 75% of senior executives have serious health problems. Not just they don't have energy, they have serious health problems. And so we're trying to accomplish great things in the workplace, be great people in society, and be great moms and dads and boyfriends and girlfriends, and yet we have no energy. We're burned out, and our lives don't reflect what we're trying to accomplish. So then they had us write out a new story. Okay, I'm committed to completing my mission by improving my engagement and energy in all areas of my life. And my specific plan includes, and this is just an example, but it includes I'm going to work out 3 days a week. I'm going to lose X number of pounds by December 2015. I'm going to reduce my cholesterol to this level by doing whatever, diet or whatever. I'm going to have a date night with my spouse, and I'm going to complete project management training because I need that to get to the next level of my job, and I'm going to do it by this date. And that's writing down your new story or your mission. and then you gauge yourself against that. You look at how am I doing against it. It's not like a New Year's resolution. It's like something you always have. You always have a mission, and it's because you want to be that's the person that you want to be. Okay? So, does that make sense? And that's probably the most important part, because the exercise is like dieting or whatever. Sometimes you're into it, sometimes you're not. But if you have a compelling picture of a preferable future that's driving you to accomplish something in life, especially with someone else in your life, a spouse or someone, that's motivating. My wife and I help people with finances by doing visioning and financial planning. And I basically just take basic accounting principles that I learned in business, but we tie it to a mission. And I'm amazed at how motivated and exciting people are, not to budget, but to accomplish something in life, to accomplish a mission, because we all have that in us. So that's kind of the idea. Any questions? I mean, that was 2.5 days of training where they did this, and they took our physical thing, so we knew where we were physically. And it was surprising in our group too, how many people had serious health problems that impact your energy level. So I share this with you guys as something I think is important, as a tool to help you have the energy, because believe me, it takes energy to be in corporate America today, or in nonprofits or wherever you want to work. Any questions? Make sense? Does it resonate with you guys a little bit? Does it? So go ahead and 20% of the time do whatever you want. Enjoy the chocolate decadence or whatever. Okay, one other topic I want to cover before we go to the software, and that is emotional intelligence. I put that thing, and I sent you guys an email. I don't know if you had a chance to do it, but do it. And this is another important part, and this is kind of a soft skill part. So pull it up here. This idea of self-awareness, okay? And that's the idea of understanding that you are good at some things and you're not good at other things. And President Obama or President Trump, they're good at some things and they're not good at other things. And the manager that you get in your firm is good at some things and not good at other things. And it's recognizing what those things are and being honest about yourself and aware, sort of situational awareness about your career and what you're good at and what you're not good at. And good managers are people who learn how to surround themselves with good people that have skills that they don't have. So as an example, here in this class, Tiffany's way better than me at technology stuff. So she helps me tremendously. I was thanking her the other day. She just to help me with working through, even though I teach technology, I'm not very good at it, but it fascinates me a lot. I love technology, but I'm not good at it. I used to be a programmer in RPG2 and APL. I love programming. I hate playing video games or computer games, but I love programming. But I'm not very good at it. And I know that. So when I had to do systems development and when I have to teach a class, when I have to do things, I like to have somebody working with me that's good at that part. So I realize that's a weakness of mine. I'm not good at it. I don't apologize for it because it's just the way I'm made. I have other strengths that I'm good at. Like, yeah. I can't think of any now. But so self-awareness is very important. And then self-regulation, that's recognizing your strengths and weaknesses and knowing when to say something, for example, and when not to. So for example, if I'm in a meeting and I know that Fred is his hot button is, mentioning anything about the Yankees because he hates the Yankees so bad. And I know that all that's going to do is disrupt do you hate the Yankees?
I actually have big Yankees.
Oh, is it? Okay. So if I know that in a meeting or in a conversation mentioning something about the Yankees is going to set Fred off, and is that really going to get us to where we want to go here? I'm regulating what I'm going to say, even though it's something that's true. Have you ever met someone who has to tell you the hard, tough news, even though they're constantly bombarding you with bad news or something because they just feel they're responsible for correcting the world about everything? Well, that's not self-regulation, because when in every meeting you have in your career and things you're doing, you have an objective, and the objective is to accomplish something. So saying just whatever comes to your mind is often disruptive to that process. It's better to stop and think about, is this going to get us, if the goal or the purpose of this meeting is to get an agreement on how we're going to design the blockchain, and bringing up the Yankees to Fred is going to send us off on a tangent here, maybe I better not say that. That's this idea of self-regulation. It's recognizing your strengths and your weaknesses and having, the other one is empathy, understanding how other people think and where they come from, and knowing when to say something and when not to. And that's what empathy is. Empathy is this idea of understanding. And one thing that's been fascinating for me working for an international company is recognizing cultural differences that are very deeply imbued in us. So, you know, I know from working with Germans in Germany and people in Italy and over in Asia, very different cultures, and they're not good or bad. You know, they're just the way cultures think about stuff. So, for example, in Asian cultures, there's a very strong authority-subordinate respect and relationship, which is a good thing. You know? But sometimes it means that, you know, people are going to say yes to you about something that they don't really agree with, because there's such a respect for authority that I'm not going to challenge Peter's authority because he's the authority figure. So you know, those kind of things. In German culture, there's a very strong drive to conform. Everyone conforms to the process. That's why Siemens is probably the best engineering company in the world, because everyone follows processes very carefully. You know? I'm part Irish. In Irish culture, being a rebel is celebrated. My brother lives in Ireland, and he's a rebel. He was, you know, he took a kayak around the country of Ireland to raise money for Irish people in schools. My grandfather, as this history goes, he took the rent money. They were supposed to pay the rent within Ireland at 18 years old, and he used it and came to America and started his life in New York City. You know, he's like a celebrity in the family. You know? So every culture has different things, and they're not good or bad, they're just the culture. And understanding culture is part of self-awareness and self-regulation, understanding that I'm going to deal differently with someone from Asia than I'm going to deal with someone from Germany or someone from you know, Brazil or Africa or somewhere else, because we have different cultures. And I love the richness of the cultures, and if you recognize that, you learn how to bring people together. And that's one of the reasons I shared earlier in the class that I was told when I hired people, don't hire anyone with a 3.2 or lower grade point average, and don't hire anyone who doesn't speak a second language, because we're interested in people that are culturally diverse and can work across cultures. And you're going to find that, especially in bigger companies and big firms today. The world's gotten a lot smaller. I mean, this class is a representation of a great diversity of cultures. And there aren't good and bad cultures. There's just different cultures. I know for me, I was finishing my MBA, and I got transferred down to Jackson. I was in a Chicago school, Governor State University, MBA program, part of the University of Chicago. And I went down to Jackson, Mississippi. I got transferred down there. And the only school that I could take my classes in, because it was accredited, was Jackson State University, which is a predominantly black college in Jackson, Mississippi. What a great experience. I mean, I had fantastic teachers. I was probably the only, you know, non-black person in the school. I think there were 4 others in the school at that time, but I had some fantastic courses on business policy and other things, and it was so I was a minority in that culture. But I had some of the best experiences and best classes I ever had. I learned a lot about the cultures and differences in the cultures. So this idea of empathy, self-awareness, you know, go kind of hand in hand here. The next one is motivation. And that's this idea that if any of you are standing here going, I want to get my MBA because I want to make a lot of money, I warn you, that's not what you want to do. You can make a lot of money, and it's not going to, if you're not happy now, you won't be happy with a lot of money. You know? So I know you're saying, yeah, well, I'd like to try. You know? So I have a little stake in the ground back when I was in college in Maryland, and I had a backpack and a bicycle, and I made $2,500 a year working as a work control specialist at the University of Maryland, and I was happy as a lark. And then I had, you know, 2 houses and, you know, 5 acres and cars and toys and all this stuff, and I wasn't any more happy with this responsibility. I always think back to that time. I was happy. Those were good years. You know, but you got to have some goal that's beyond you. You know, that you want to do something. You know, your generation is more altruistic than my generation. So make sure you have something that you want to accomplish in life around that mission idea. And it can be saving the whales. It can be your faith. It can be, you know, improving, changing, you know, auditing forever. You know, and I'm going to ask you guys when I see you again after this class if you made a difference in the auditing profession, because that's why I'm here and that's what I want you to do. You are the one who's going to change it, right? Right? Yeah. I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to hear what I heard at the alumni thing. Some are going to say, yeah, I tried. They told me to shut up and do what we told you to do before. And others say, yeah, I'm doing forensics. I'm doing analytics. I've got it. You know, Let's get into it. And then the last one we already talked about, but this is this idea of social skills. And this is, and again, I was really impressed with you guys, the way you're pushing your boundaries and your comfort zone a little bit in presenting and in, you know, sharing ideas and in communicating ideas, because those are the people that are going to get the partner opportunities, the promotion opportunities. You know, it won't matter how much you know about accounting. You know, and the only way you get good at it is practice. If you can read books about it, you can, you know, but you know, whenever you get a chance to get in front of a group and speak, do it. Okay, whenever you get a chance to sell an idea, do it. Watch people who are good at it and do what they do. You know, and enjoy it. You know, and break through on that. So that's it. So that's kind of this idea of emotional intelligence. So we actually, when we interview now, we interview for emotional intelligence, because the thing I do at the end of every interview is I say, I'm going to leave here for 10 minutes. I'll get you a bottle of water. I'm going to get a bottle of water. I'll get you a bottle of water. I'd like you to present to me something either about continuous auditing or something you're passionate about, and I'd like you to convince me why I need to be passionate about it in 5 to 7 minutes. No slides, use a whiteboard if you want to use that, and tell me how you're going to do that. And we do that in interviewing from Ivy League schools, that, you know, so we give people, we want to see if people have emotional intelligence or how they put together ideas, how they sell it. So that's that. Does that make sense? Okay.